Hi, everyone. I'm Bobby Stevens. Welcome back to That Makes Sense. This is the podcast where we break down consumer industry trends and explore their impact on both businesses and on us as consumers. You're in for a real treat today as you've tuned in to another of our special series focused on the future of the consumer industry. So far, our series has discussed a wide variety of interesting topics, from digital disruption to the reconfiguration of the industry, and most recently, a notable shift toward a demand-driven market. So if you haven't already, make sure you check out some of those episodes, of course, after you listen to this one first. But in today's installment of the series, we're going to get a bit more granular and dive into a specific subsector within retail, grocery. And we're really going to look at what it looks like in the future of consumer context. And I think it goes without saying that grocery is highly competitive and in today's world, increasingly complex. Local and regional stores that were built to meet the needs of a community have evolved into mega chains, serving millions of households with lots of diversity across both physical and digital channels. So, what will the future of grocery look like? To answer that question, we have two amazing guests. First, please welcome Kirk Ball, EVP and Chief Information Officer at Giant Eagle. He's a seasoned executive with over 20 years of experience in grocery retail. For instance, prior to Giant Eagle, he served as the CTO at the Kroger Company. Kirk, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to this discussion.
Awesome. And to join him, who these two guys clearly know each other already, is my colleague, Danny Edsall, who's Deloitte's grocery sector leader and the author of multiple pieces, including The Future of Grocery Retail that we'll talk about a little bit today that launched earlier this month. Danny, welcome.
Hey, Bobby. Thanks, man. And Kirk, again, welcome. And thanks for giving us the opportunity to talk about something we're passionate about.
I love it. All right. So it's great to have you both here to be able to tackle this from different perspectives. So let's dive right in. To start, Danny, given the future of grocery retail piece is really an extension of the broader future of consumer industry research, can you just speak about what grocery industry shifts drove you to dive into this research?
You got that right, Bobby. I think podcast listeners will probably have already heard about the changes in the consumer industries and the way the world is changing, the way society is changing, the way technology is accelerating those changes, and big global trends like climate change and economics, policy, and power are kind of reshaping our world. In our little corner of the world, we've been trying to take those big themes and understand the impact on the specific subsector, which is grocery retail. So if you take all those big trends and you boil them down to our industry, we've spent the last year and a half really going deep on how is that affecting the way consumers want to buy their groceries, where to buy their groceries, who to buy their groceries from, and how to buy them most effectively and efficiently, so that we can basically advise our clients on kind of how to skate where the puck's going and make the best of those trends.
Danny, I thought you did a really nice job of classification of the multiple sets of forces that are really changing the shape of the retail grocery industry. You highlighted the changing society and culture, certainly exponential change and disruption of technology. There's a lot of shifting demand, economics, policy impact. Just look at the food disruption coming from Ukraine,
right,
and various parts of the world, and then certainly the changing consumer. And as our country, at least in the US, and this is applicable for around the world, becomes more diverse, and countries, population, and mix of ethnicities continues to change and evolve, it certainly has an impact on how grocers serve their consumers in their markets. So it's a really salient point. It's an incredibly dynamic industry.
I think it's really interesting that you guys hit on a lot of kind of macro trends that then apply themselves uniquely in the grocery space. And one other thing that I think is pretty interesting is just how frequently us as consumers interact with a grocery store. I mean, compare it to most other types of retail. You're there every week, every couple of days, and there might not be physically there, but you got to eat. And so I think that's pretty important.
I mean, if you really summarize it, the grocery trade was basically, the whole business model was developed after the war, largely in the US. And, as most things do, they start in California and spread across the world, right? And if you think about the forces that shaped the way we do business in grocery, a massively growing middle class. That middle class was getting wealthier, was basically living in suburbs and driving cars. and they wanted a convenient and kind of a high value place to shop. And so grocery stores started to grow up in those suburbs, and the whole big box model, supermarkets and big box model was sort of built around that kind of sense of convenience. They were there to serve a largely kind of homogenous society with a largely nuclear family. Well, fast forward to the post-Cold War community, and mass migration has happened across the world. The consumer has changed dramatically. Where we live, how we live, the units in which we live have changed. And really what the future of grocery is about is kind of readapting that business model that served us so well for 40, 50 years in the last century to that new consumer. I was looking at something yesterday. The 2003, 10 of the top 15 sellers of grocery were traditional supermarkets in 2003. Right now, 5 of the top sellers of groceries are supermarkets. So you can also buy your supermarket in a club, in a big box retailer, in a pharmacy, or in a dollar store. And that mix has really spread. And so it would be naive to think that if you're selling groceries, you should be doing it the same way that was enshrined in 1950s, right?
It's a really good segue to my next question to Kirk, which, Kirk, my understanding, and I live in a market that has some Giant Eagles and some of your other brands, that Giant Eagle has indeed tapped into sort of this mass to micro shift that I think Danny was talking about, a lot of the pressures that have forced that to some extent, and particularly with the dedication that you put on keeping the customer at the center of any of your efforts there at Giant Eagle. Can you just expand a little bit and share with us how the Giant Eagle team is keeping up with changing consumer preferences?
The beautiful thing about the grocery industry is we have a frequency of touch with our customer that's probably unparalleled. We have interaction with our customers probably 2 to 3 times a week across various formats versus various types of shopping trips. That frequency of touch gives us the great opportunity to introspect and understand what our consumer is doing. The other thing that I'll talk a little bit about is also our desire. You mentioned this, Bobby, and it's really to put our consumer at the heart of everything that we do. And as consumers' lives have changed from that nuclear family of the 40s and 50s to where we are today, and you see the pace of people's lives, the complexity of people's lives, the things that they're involved in, it certainly drives a preference for consumers to have little friction when interacting with grocery retailers. So that causes us to deliver experience in many cases in different ways. So the ability to buy online and pick up in store, the ability to buy online and have delivered to home, the ability in some instances to have the structure of our store be structured to accommodate a fill-in trip where you'll see things like milk and bread kind of at the front of the store for that quick fill-in shop in a larger footprint store. And also that translates to our digital interaction with our consumers. And I think there's a ton of opportunity for grocery retailers to still drive the elimination of friction. But, I think there's this next generation. If you think about what mom goes through to plan meals, mom or dad, for their household, it's a challenge, right? You're trying to accommodate the taste preferences of your household, the health preferences of your household. Somebody trying to diet, is somebody diabetic? And then you have to sit down and you have to plan out your meals for the week. Why can't we help? And you see a lot of companies spinning up to help grocery companies do this. Let's put together a meal planning application. Let's take into account people's taste preferences, health preferences, et cetera. And then let's present, using artificial intelligence, let's present meals to them that are geared towards those factors that they want us to consider that are really personalized, hyper-personalized for their household. So constant understanding and reflection and introspection into the changing tastes and preferences of our consumers, and understanding that the word consumer is not one homogenous group of people. It's a diverse set and group of people.
Kirk, you teed something up for me. I don't know if you meant to or not. You are wearing a nice golf shirt, so it could have been. You talked a lot about the frequency of touch and how that, for you guys, generates a lot of understanding of preferences and what people have done. And your goal is to discern and understand that and convert that into something that helps the consumer. And, there's some technology out there that everybody's talking about that could play a role in that. And that's, AI, and specifically generative AI. And, recently published a paper on Gen AI in the grocery industry that took a look and talked to 100 grocery executives about the potential for killer applications using Gen AI, and that meal planning app might be one of those. And when we talk to those people, 40% of them, and this early, that's only going up, think that their company will be using Gen AI for a specific business application soon. So what are your thoughts on how the grocery industry is adopting AI and or other surrounding technologies?
Well, I think when we talk about the term AI, we have to understand the different flavors of artificial intelligence. There's generative AI, there's natural language processing, there's image recognition, and there's machine learning, right? So grocery retailers are using various forms and versions of AI in a number of different ways. So when you get into price and promotion planning, you're probably using some type of machine learning in order to help you understand how to get down to the micro level, at store level, within customer segments, within stores, to understand what prices and promotions are most effective in what locations and for what segment of customers that you serve. Certainly image recognition, the ability to leverage image recognition in a store to understand and decrease the cycle time from when a product is out of stock on a shelf to the time where that product gets restocked. That is a situation that frustrates customers quite a bit when they come into store and they want to get something and we don't have it in stock. But if you can use image recognition to quickly understand that something is out of stock, and you can send signaling to have team members in stores restock that product quickly and decrease that cycle time that you're out of stock on a shelf, your customer sat's going to go up tremendously. So, and then from a generative AI perspective, the ability to leverage generative AI to create recommendations for meals, to enhance your search capability on your digital properties, the ability to leverage generative AI to decrease the amount of effort and cycle time to put together a marketing promotion, and to take that cycle time from whatever it might be, 8 to 10 weeks to put together a major promotion down to maybe 2 weeks, leveraging generative AI. Certainly, you always have to have a human in the loop. Generative AI is not perfect, but, I think those are some examples of how you can use generative AI and other forms of AI to accelerate and improve the experience for consumers in your store. And the other thing I would just add, we're thinking about how do we leverage artificial intelligence capabilities to also assist how our team members work and how they navigate through the store. How do they navigate through their job? So, for example, if you can put together, let's say, the capability to systemically monitor the status of cold cases in stores, so you don't have to have team members walk around and manually recording temperatures, but you can do that systematically and then have those temperatures and have capability to assess when those temperatures are trending up, they're trending down, it's too cold, it's too warm, and then send signaling again to team members so that you can get that cold case fixed before you have a major issue. So there are literally hundreds of applications for artificial intelligence in a store. I think part of the challenge is figuring out what are all the potential use cases and then figuring out what are the most impactful ones to go after in the right sequence based upon what you and your enterprise are trying to accomplish. Danny, I don't know. What do you think about that?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. The way I like to think about it, again, is putting the customer in the middle of it. And the fun thing about that is we're all customers, right? So if you imagine the journey that you'd like to see, imagine I'm a single dad, but I've got a kid and I've got my aging mother living with me, right? So I am that carer and the person that is planning meals for my family. And what do I want? I want somebody to take away the cognitive load of making them healthy, making them happy, and staying within my budget, right? So Kurt, you described that. And then when you get to the shopping journey, the things that I don't want to actually go and physically pick up magically arrive on my doorstep, right? Because you've already figured it out. I'm going to need some new kitchen roll in the next week because I've used it all. For the things that I actually do want to go and kind of interact with, I'm going to a store that isn't just full of aisle after aisle of cans and boxes and packages, that's full of exciting, interesting ways to solve my meal problems and to inspire me and to make me happy. I'm a bit of a foodie, so I want to go there for a nice restaurant experience. When I get there, I want the staff to know me, to treat me well, to treat me as an individual and a person. And if they do, I'm willing to pay that a little bit more. I'm not just about value. I'm willing to pay kind of restaurant prices for great quality and food. And then when I get there, I also want to be able to pick up the stuff that and have it already kind of pre-assorted and pre-segmented for me, ready to actually kind of pick it up and take it home in the most convenient way. That's the winning formula, I think. And if you can achieve that formula, you're going to get rewarded with loyalty, and you're going to get people to come back and back and back. So I think that's the new battleground. It's really about conveniently solving for my meal occasions. And grocery needs to evolve from filling my pantry, which is kind of old school with ingredients, to kind of filling my stomach with wonderful, nutritious food more easily than just ending up in a drive-through, right?
I think if you listen to everything we've talked about, it's all about the customer and the team member, the associate in the store that interacts with the customer, leveraging technology to eliminate friction and cognitive overload for both of those audiences, and to create an experience that is incredibly enjoyable, impactful. And Danny touched on it, but it allows you to start to recreate that 1920 shopkeeper experience where your local shopkeeper, he or she knew you, they knew your family, they knew your kids' names, they knew everybody's birth date, they knew your dogs, they knew your taste preferences, they gave you a heads up when something new that was coming up in the store that they thought you'd like, right? And so that's our challenge, to figure out how to apply these different technologies and these different capabilities to eliminate friction and to intimately display to our customers and our team members that we understand them and what they're about.
So you guys started to talk a little bit about the future, and the Back to the Future Marty McFly reference was in there as well, which I enjoyed. But Danny, on the future of grocery retail piece, it does talk a lot about what the grocery store of the future could look like. Maybe not the overall enterprise, but the store itself. Could you just give us a 30, 60-second peek into that? And Kirk, when Danny goes, I'd love for you to chime in on how you think the grocery store of the future needs to adapt to connect people with their community. You started talking about it a little bit there, but maybe you build on that. I'd love to hear from both of you on that topic.
So, Bobby, we got like a challenge and an opportunity, right? The challenging side is as customers become even more demanding about how they want to be served, and quite rightly so, and as we take friction out, that increasingly means that we're going to up the level of service, and we're going to take things to their home. We're going to provide them and put them in the trunk of their car, and we're going to serve them in that way, which may not even involve either a trip or a journey around the grocery store, right? I was at a recent conference, and the prediction was perhaps grocery digital sales right now are about 11%, and perhaps in the next 5 years, they'll be up to 30%. Now think about your local grocery store. It's somewhere either between sort of 30 and 60,000 square feet, depending on where you shop. Could be up to 100,000 square feet if you're in a supercenter. Imagine 30% of that space is no longer needed for the humdrum ingredients of life, right? I don't really want that to be full of potentially 2-liter bottles of Coke or huge, great bundles of kitchen towel, right? So what are we going to do with that space? Well, the great news is, if we can do interesting, exciting, and compelling things with that space, customers will come to it. There are already retailers out there that basically turn their space into a source of joy, a source of passion, and a source of fulfillment for those of us that love to eat. And guess what? Most of us love to eat, right? So the store of the future looks much less like a traditional grocery store full of aisles and full of products and full of cans. It looks much more like a compelling place that you'd like to hang out with your family. It may have a kid's playground. It's probably got a fantastic cafe or an informal restaurant. It's probably got a community space where you're going to meet for your local town hall meetings. It might have a church attached to it, right? It might be close to a cinema, but it's going to be a lot more compelling than the drudgery of kind of walking up and down an aisle with a cart, throwing cans into a cart, and then standing in a long line at the checkout. And that's probably the last thing I'll kind of throw in there is, I don't think the store of the future has a traditional checkout. We certainly don't queue up to pass a bunch of cans over a laser scanner for 15 minutes and then queue for the privilege of paying. We probably just walk in and then we'll walk out. And the grocery store knows we're there, knows what we want, and arranges itself, in effect, to be able to serve us better. And Kurt mentioned that, the associates there, the associates in that store are probably going to spend less of their time doing menial tasks and moving boxes and cans around the store and much more interacting with their customers. So it's an exciting time. I mean, I've been doing this for 30 plus years, and the last 5 years and the next 5, gosh, it's such an amazing time to be in grocery.
Sounds like the old shopping cart dance is going to be obsolete. So I'm going to have to pick up a new move or two for my next wedding that I get invited to. But Kirk, go ahead. Sorry.
No, you're fine. I think Danny touched on a number of points, a couple that I'll add on to. I do think you're going to see a much richer experience around perishable items, around items that are custom created, baked goods, breads, etc. I think those items that typically stand in center of store, I think you'll still have but I think you have a smaller center of store. I think there's going to be an explosion and richness of items that are created in store and experience around baked goods, around cooked goods, fresh goods. I also think you're going to see the ability to animate inanimate objects in a store to create an immersive experience. So imagine if I can walk into a store and I have a hands-free way that I can have the store shelf speak to me, specifically highlighting through maybe some 3D glasses or some glass technology. Once it gets hands-free, that helps understand for items that I like and buy, which ones are on promo. And then if I want to click a little bit deeper and understand, where was that item sourced from? But creating that immersive experience where those inanimate objects in a store actually come to life and give me additional rich information that I want to understand. So I think you're going to see much more immersive experiences. I think you're going to see much richer focus on perishables, meats, perishables, breads, immersing people in how do those items get created, right? Where do they come from? I think you'll see more stores growing perishables adjacent to or as part of the stores in vertical gardens, if you will, for super freshness. I think you'll see some stores that will create experiences like that. So Danny said it is an incredibly exciting time. It's an incredibly exciting space. And I think all the entities that play a part in that grocery experience are going to be excited about what the future looks like.
That's awesome. I mean, you guys painted a really nice picture of the future and sort of the balancing act between still engaging with that customer on a personal level, but infusing technology, infusing convenience, shifting to the demands of things like a different experience for perishables. Not only is that right for the consumer, that drives the frequency that we were talking about earlier, Kirk. And so I think there's all these like symbiosis between the consumer, the team member, and then ultimately the enterprise value that can be delivered there. And so let's talk about one more topic. This is our final question, and we always shift gears on all of our Future of Consumer episodes, and we kind of hit on the topic of buying into better. And for those who have either read any of our Future of Consumer or listened to the previous episodes, you'll be familiar, but buying into better is really all around social good, sustainability, climate, equity, and how important that is to consumers these days. And how not all, but many now vote with their wallet to companies that sort of put that at equal footing to other things. And so Kirk and Danny, maybe to stay on topic, what is one way each of you buy into better, specifically through your grocery shopping habits?
A couple of ways for our household. We definitely try to buy organic as much as possible to reduce the use of pesticides, which ultimately have been a great thing, but we like much more natural ways to raise food. We also look to buy things that are recyclable. We've tried to significantly reduce the amount of plastic items that we buy. We also try to do a much better job of planning our meals so that we're not overbuying and then wasting food. There are way too many people in our country that are hungry, and you have a lot of grocers, including Giant Eagle, that are doing magnificent things in terms of working to help get meals donated, perishable items donated to places where people need that food. So those are a few things that we do personally in our household.
Danny, what about you?
I don't think I can even begin to compete with that, Kirk, because I think you're hitting all the big ones, right? But I think we're both on a mission here, and we have been for a long time, because I think the grocery industry really does care, right? We're obviously serving our shareholders, but we're actually serving our customers. And our customers, most of these grocery companies have been around, many of the grocery companies have been around 100 years. And basically, they've been around plus 100 plus years because they've actually been rewarded with loyalty by the customers around them, and they're an absolutely important part of the community. And I think as customer awareness grows around the need for diversity, equity, inclusion, sustainability, the grocers have actually been on the leading edge of reshaping their businesses to match. Because if they aren't, let's face it, then they lose relevance and they lose loyalty and they lose business, right? I mean, I think that's the other thing that we're always balancing, is not to do things just for the sake of it or because it sounds good, because we're actually balancing people's economic well-being and their physical well-being with the need to kind of progress. So, but I'm, just proud to have been part of this industry for so long, and again, excited for the next decade or so. And I think we really can not just buy into better, we can actually create that better outcome.
Yep. Well, thank you guys for sharing both the personal anecdotes and the broader thoughts around the industry and the subsector and how the critical role it plays in customers' everyday lives, in the team members' everyday lives, and your own personal everyday lives. So it was a great conversation, ton of insights, discussed the future of grocery. We dove into AI. We talked about the frequency. We talked about the change we've seen in the industry over the last 100 years and how dramatic that's been, the store of the future. So we covered a ton of ground. So thank you, Kirk. Thank you, Danny, for your time. For our audience, as we continue to learn how to evolve and stay ahead of the change curve, I'd like to leave you with the worst pun ever, but some food for thought. How can your business evolve and change and adapt to the radical transformation we're seeing while also committing to buying into better and make some money? Has to financially be viable as well, as was mentioned here. So if you want to gain more insights into the future of the consumer industry, simply search the keywords Deloitte Future of Consumer, or feel free to connect with Kirk Ball or Danny Edsall or I on LinkedIn. And also make sure to check out our full perspective on the future of consumer industry, including other episodes of this special series. So thank you all for tuning in, and see you on the next episode of That Makes Sense. You can listen on your favorite podcatcher, whether it be Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, or Spotify. Simply search for That Makes Sense. Connect with me on social media, Bobby Stevens on LinkedIn or @BobbyStevens on Twitter. This presentation contains general information only, and Deloitte is not, by means of this presentation, rendering accounting, business, financial, investment, legal, tax, or other professional advice or services. This presentation is not a substitute for such professional advice or services, nor should it be used as a basis for any decision or action that may affect your business. Before making any decision or taking any action that may affect your business, you should consult a qualified professional advisor. Deloitte shall not be responsible for any loss sustained by any person who relies on this presentation.